The opinions expressed in the following program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect those of Rogers nor Rogers TV.
Hi, my name is Karen Wolfe, and I'll be moderating this York-Simcoe candidate debate, hopefully to help you make an informed decision when you head to the polls on June the 7th. This debate is being co-sponsored by Rogers TV and the Georgina Chamber of Commerce. I'll be introducing the candidates to you in a moment, but first I want to go over some of the ground rules that we'll be following throughout this show. First, each candidate will be given 1 minute at the beginning of the debate to share their platform with you. They'll be given a 10-second warning just before their time ends so they can wrap up. In order to be fair and equitable, our timing guidelines are going to be strictly enforced. The questions being asked actually were developed by local residents and executives here at Rogers TV and with the Georgina Chamber of Commerce. All candidates will be given 1 minute to answer each of the questions. Again, timelines will be strictly enforced. At some point throughout the program, we will open the floor up to give candidates an opportunity for rebuttal and debate. At the conclusion of the debate, in reverse order, each candidate will be given 1 minute for their closing remarks. The order of appearance that you will see them today on the panel was selected through a random draw. So now let's meet the candidates. Dave Slawsey, the New Democratic Party. Laura-Lee Carruthers, Sylvia Druma, the Libertarian Party, Laura-Lee Carruthers, the Liberal Party, and Caroline Mulrooney, the Progressive Conservative Party of Ontario. All candidates in the York-Simcoe riding were invited to join us for the debate. However, Franco Cavecchia from the Moderate Party and Alexander Zalucki from the Green Party were unable to attend. David Loft, the candidate for the Ontario Trillium Party, who was scheduled to appear at this debate, has made a decision to withdraw from the race, and he's asked us to read a statement for him. Last week, we were advised of a serious medical condition that will unquestionably require both surgery and an extensive recovery period for my wife. We are meeting with the surgeons in the next 2 weeks to determine our path forward. As we take that path, she will not have to look far to take my hand. Accordingly, I have withdrawn my candidacy for the Trillium Party in York-Simcoe. I would like to thank all of those who have supported me through their encouragement, and would like to thank the candidates who have endured me over the last week of debating. You can be assured that they are here for the right reasons. Sincerely, David Loft. We want to thank David for his statement, and we wish him and his family the very best. But now it's time for us to turn our attention to the task at hand. Our first opening statement will be provided by David Slawsey from the NDP Party. Dave?
For the 3 terms I served as Ward 3 councillor on Georgina Town Council, I was bothered by having our plans repeatedly frustrated by provincial governments, both Liberal and Conservative. We don't have to settle again for a choice between bad and worse. That is why I accepted the opportunity to run in this provincial election, in order to address the needs of our community and finish the tasks that can only be done at the provincial level. I know the struggles and needs of this community because I am from here. I've worked on the Environmental Advisory Committee for the 11 years I was on council. I worked on the issues we need resolved. We need to halt the Upper York sewage plan to prevent the 40 million litres per day of sewage from Newmarket and Aurora into our drinking water. We want to stop the paving over of the North Goldenberry Forest and stop Doug Ford from taking more land from the Greenbelt. And we need the Thames smelter cleaned up now and end the Liberals' broken promises.
Thank you, Dave. Sylvia Druma from the Libertarian Party.
Many thanks to Rogers TV for inviting us to this debate. Thank all the candidates for participation, as competition is always more entertaining and more productive. Healthcare, education, electricity generation are all monopolies of the government of Ontario. Do you think the services are run efficiently to serve the population of Ontario? All the other candidates claim that all we need is just another tweak. I've heard that for over 20 years since I first moved in the province. But I've never heard anybody asking if the present structures can actually produce positive results, can be fixed in the current framework as it is. Libertarians will create a framework that will allow for a competitive healthcare, education, electricity generation, among other things. Libertarians will also remove government's red tape that prevents small business to grow.
Thank you very much. Laura Carruthers from the Liberal Party.
Thank you. It's wonderful to be back. As many of you know, I came a very close second to Julia Monroe, our long-serving MPP, in the 2014 provincial election. Since that time, I've gained even more experience. I've been a trustee now for 15 years, re-elected over and over again by the constituents I represent. I've been chair of the York Region District School Board, where I was in charge of 125,000 students and 10,000 employees and a budget of $1.5 billion that I balanced year after year as the board's budget chair. But more importantly, I'm from here. I raised my family here. I've lived in the riding for almost a quarter of a century. And because I'm local, I know the local needs. I've lived here in the community, I've listened to the community, and my needs are your needs. I know we need a local plan. We need to continue to fund the Sutton Health Centre. We need to boost GO buses serving Keswick. We need to invest in the Keswick Business Park. We need the North Gwillimbury Forest saved. We need the Thane Smelter cleaned up, and we need to protect our lake. Doug Ford wants to make cuts, and Caroline hasn't proven she'll stand up to him.
Okay, thank you very much. Caroline Mulrooney from the Progressive Conservative Party.
Thank you very much. Well, as your progressive conservative candidate in York-Simcoe, I've met so many wonderful people across the riding. Every person has a story to tell, and more importantly, a dream they're building. I hear from farmers and doctors, nurses, shopkeepers, manufacturers, seniors, and youth advocates, and I hear from families. And what I hear is breaking my heart. They are struggling to build their dreams, and Kathleen wins Ontario. Other candidates here think that it's okay to continue on a path of reckless spending. But I hear every day in Georgina and across York-Simcoe that people don't think that this is okay anymore. They want government to get out of their way and stop making life harder, which is exactly what the PC party plans to do. We're going to clean up the hydro mess. We're going to put more money back in your pockets. We're going to restore trust and accountability in government, bring jobs back to Ontario, and heal our healthcare system. We all want a better Ontario today and tomorrow. But to do that, we need a representative and a government that has a vision that goes beyond the next election. That is the vision people tell me they expect from their next MPP, and it's one I share and I will stand up for at Queen's Park. Thank you.
Thank you very much, all of you. Our very first question in the debate is going to be directed to Sylvie Druma. Sylvie, due to escalating costs in electricity, housing, rent, gasoline, daycare, food, etc., many of Ontario's working-class families whose incomes are not keeping pace with inflation are now being described as the working poor. What programs are you offering to provide relief for these families?
That's a very good question, Karen. And I think what we have to remember, everybody has to remember here, is government doesn't have an infinite supply of money. So what can we do to provide more opportunity to people? How can we revive economy? How can we revive local economy? How can we revive the middle class? Many businesses have been decimated by this latest minimum wage increase. I've heard about 60,000 jobs being lost and other cuts that many businesses have made just to be able to survive. So what we are going to do is we are going to reduce government red tape, give you more opportunities to work. The government is going to work hand in hand with the private sector to allow those parallel structures to come on the market.
Okay, thank you very much. Laura Lee Carruthers.
Thank you. So we know that the economy in Ontario is booming. We're leading Canada. We have low unemployment, record low for the last 17 years. The types of things that we're hearing, though, is that some people are being left behind. So we're bringing in, we brought in the minimum wage to $14. We'll increase that to $15. We've brought in OHIP Plus to help cover those under 25 for all of their pharmacare needs, and we'll extend that to those over 65. We've strengthened rent control, so no one has to worry about their rent going up. And we hear Doug Ford is going to cancel that. He's not going to increase the minimum wage to $15. We're also bringing in preschool for those 2.5 to 4 to make sure that that will save families with kids in that age group $17,000 a year.
Okay, thank you very much. Caroline Mulroney.
The rising cost of living is the number one issue I hear about every day that hardworking Ontarians are struggling with. And so it's something that we need to focus on right away. We need to find a way to put more money back in people's pockets, and we have a plan to do that by lowering taxes on middle-income earners, by lowering taxes on the lowest-income earners, by lowering hydro rates by 12% for ratepayers, and by helping businesses get to do what they want to do, which is create jobs and economic growth. While the economy has done well in Ontario, it's really been centered on Toronto and Ottawa. And so there are other areas that need growth. We need to make sure that we're getting out of the way, get government out of the way, cut red tape so that governments can contribute more to provide more jobs, more economic growth in these areas so that life is more affordable. We also have a plan to provide childcare, significant childcare rebate for families with children under 15 years of age. Up to 75% of their childcare costs will be rebated.
Well, thank you very much. Dave Slussy, the NDP party.
We have to make life more affordable for all Ontario citizens. The NDP's program is committed to achieving that goal. One, we're going to reduce hydro rates by 30% by bringing it back under public control so that you no longer have to pay profits to private investors on your hydro bill. We want to bring down the price of housing by creating 60,000 new affordable housing units and putting on a speculation tax on foreign and domestic speculators that cause hyperinflation of our housing prices. We're going to put in place a gas control monitor to avoid gouging at the gas pump and stop the wild fluctuations in gas prices. We're going to create another over 200,000 child care places and more.
Thank you very much. Does anyone want to extend this discussion? Yes, Laura Lee?
Well, I think it's very rich coming from my Conservative opponent because she has already come out and said that she would scrap the increase to minimum wage. Doug Ford has said he would scrap rent control. These are things that Caroline has never had to worry about. These are services that the rest of us rely on, things like OHIP Plus, preschool. All of these services that the government provides are things that working people rely on, and millionaires like Doug Ford and Caroline Mulroney are talking about cutting all these services, and I think that's terrible.
Thank you. I'll let Caroline respond to that.
Thank you. Well, the increase in minimum wage, the Liberals looked at this in 2014 and decided to index it to inflation. The reason they increased to minimum wage at the time they did was because there's an election coming. I support an increase in the minimum wage. What I don't support is doing it for political purposes, because the way they brought it in, it ended up hurting those that they wanted to help the most, put a lot of pressure on small businesses that could not absorb those costs. So as a result, they're not hiring more, and they're not producing more economic growth. And so we have a plan to provide immediate tax relief to people at the lowest income scale. People earning minimum wage will not pay any income tax under our plan.
Okay, thank you. Dave, did you want to chime in there?
Yeah, just on 2 points. One, in the centerpiece of the New Democratic Party program to help people be able to afford life is our extended Medicare program that includes all dental and all pharmacare products for everybody. all drug plans included, so everybody in the province is covered. And no, not again do we have people who can't get their prescriptions filled at drugstores when they find the price of the prescriptions beyond their reach. I also just have to comment back, because Caroline is talking about giving tax relief to minimum wage earners. She's talking about a tax relief to people who have who have other exemptions, that their tax burden is not particularly significant in that respect on the income tax. The cut that they're talking actually amounts to zero. She's taking $1,800 a year out of people's pockets by cutting back the dollar an hour increase.
Yes, Sylvia.
I would like to jump in with only one observation, David. Yes, in terms of my question, actually I have a question. The increase in minimum wage isn't actually an increase in tax revenue for the government, can you tell me? Like, you moved people up the rank, so you guys are going to get more money from people.
Okay. All right, we'll leave that question out there until we get into when we open the floor again. The next question is for Laura Carruthers from the Liberal Party. Ontario's debt is already over $320 billion with $12.5 billion in interest payments. How does your party propose to bring down this debt so we can redirect some of those interest payments to support needed services?
Thank you for that question. I think it's really important that when we look at deficits, that we look at a way out. And if you read the Liberals' plan, there is a very solid plan to bring us back out of deficit and get us back onto a balanced budget by making strategic investments. And this is what's so important. The type of investments that the Liberals are making in things like preschool, bring women back to work that much earlier. For every dollar that's spent in that kind of investment, we end up getting $2.5 back towards the economy. So by growing the economy, that's how we get ourselves out of deficit and make sure that we can start paying down the debt. I think that if you look at the other parties, without a costed platform, the Conservatives, based on the promises they've made of reducing revenue and all these spending promises that they keep making, they're going to put us into debt even further. We've seen economists say that there's about $10 billion in debt. That's far more than any of the other parties are talking about, and we deserve a costed platform from them.
Okay, thank you. Caroline.
Well, after 15 years of Liberal governments, our debt has doubled under the Liberals. We're now sitting at over $310 billion, which represents $21,000 per person. It's the cost of a car. And with their plan, it plans to grow. We could be looking at $400 billion over the next 5-10 years at this rate. When you're in a hole, you have to stop digging. And so what we need to do is we need to focus on ending this culture of waste that has really developed under the Liberals over the last 15 years. We need to stop wasting money. What we need to do is focus on investing in the supports and services that we need, but doing that in a fiscally responsible way. And unfortunately, the Liberals are very good at creative accounting. And so we need to wait. On June 7th, June 8th, when we open the books, we're going to see what kind of position we're really in. We know that we're in a serious deficit position. The Attorney General says we're double what the Liberals are projecting.
Okay, thank you very much. Dave.
Caroline's talking about if you're in a hole, you stop digging. Yet everything the Conservatives are saying are digging a bigger hole for us. You keep cutting revenue sources and you make the hole, the debt hole and deficit hole, much larger. They are proposing to cut taxes on the corporate sector even farther. Now, I'm sure their friends in the corporate sector and their friends in the banks don't mind us having a debt and paying all that interest of public money into the private sector. That's not what the NDP proposes to do. What we want to do, we will return the rate of corporate taxes to a modest 13%, raising it back 1.5 percentage points, bringing in significant revenue for the country and ending this corporate tax giveaway. We will look at moderate increase on very high income earners in this country. In this province, in order to help bring those revenues back in to subsidize the programs we're proposing. We've costed out. Our program will bring down the deficit consistently over the life of our plan.
Okay, thank you. Sylvia.
I think that we all have to stand back and take a good look at it and ask ourselves, how did we get ourselves in this mess? What has happened? Everybody's suggesting government services and programs and so on, which is all good. Now the question is anybody asking the people what do they really want? I haven't heard anybody asking people, what do you guys want? What do you want me to provide for you for the money you're paying me? Nobody has asked this question. Allowing parallel structures and non-governmental organizations to run in parallel with the government monopolies will increase competition, will reduce cost, will improve service and the offerings to general population.
Thank you very much. Does someone want to do a little bit of rebuttal or debate there? Laura Lee?
First of all, we do ask that question every single day. We know what people want. We've been listening to the people. As budget chair of the York Region District School Board, as I said, I was in charge of a $1.5 billion budget that had to be balanced. So when I hear the Conservatives saying that they're going to put money back in your pocket and yet still have all these spending promises, to me it's a little bit misleading. Economists have looked at it, and it's somewhere in the vicinity of $11 to $14 is going to be put back in your pocket, but you're not going to have the services that you rely on. So for me, I'd rather see the investments in the services that we need. We saw under the previous Conservative government that the cuts to infrastructure meant that our schools became prohibitive to repair.
Thank you.
That's digging a hole.
Thank you very much. I'm going to go to the next question, and I'm going to ask Caroline Mulrooney to be the first one to respond to this. In 2008, for the first time in history, Ontario became a have-not province and began receiving transfer payments from the federal government due to reduced economic performance. What can be done to bring Ontario back into the glory days as the economic engine of Canada?
I think it's hard for many Ontarians to believe that Ontario is now a have-not province, receiving equalization payments from other provinces like Newfoundland, but that is in fact where we have ended up after 15 years of Liberal governments. We need to encourage economic growth. We need growth. We need to work with our businesses to get them doing what they need to do. By cutting corporate and small business tax rates, we are allowing companies to invest in their own infrastructure and in creating jobs. We're giving them the money they need to be able to hire more people to provide more economic growth. We need to stop borrowing money so that our credit stops being downgraded as it has been. Our outlook was just recently downgraded again, telling the rest of the world that Ontario is not a place that you should invest in. And so we need to have a complete change in the way we approach businesses, we approach investment, and we need to let people know, business and investors know, that Ontario is a place where they should invest, and that's how we'll turn it around or get started on it.
Thank you very much. Dave?
We have to not be afraid of investing in infrastructure in this province, as opposed to the Conservative plan that wants to cut all revenue sources, such as the road tax, to stop developing highway connections, such as the needed link between the 404 and the 400, to help promote the growth in the business parks throughout our riding. We have to be able to provide those kind of infrastructure projects to support business. At the same time, when we propose to put in a universal health care plan that includes pharmacare and dental care, it's another way of supporting businesses so that they can provide the kind of health care for their workers, especially in small businesses, provide those kind of health care that reduces absenteeism and keeps their workers happy and healthy. We need to be able to put in a plan of government procurement so that we're committing at least 33% of all government procurement will be from Ontario businesses, and in that way using that spending power to stimulate the economy.
Thank you very much. Sylvia?
My question is, what has happened with so many small, very small and medium-sized businesses, which are the backbone of every healthy economy? Is it possible that due to over 300,000 government regulations, they're just going extinct? Can we do anything to revive this? Reducing some of those regulations isn't going to be good. I hear everybody talking about government making big infrastructure spending and so on. Well, I'm sorry to be the bearer of bad news, but I've been raised and born in Eastern Europe, where the government was the only player on the market, where there was no small or medium-sized businesses, lots of red tape. What has happened to these countries? They went bankrupt.
All right. I'm going to go on to the next question, which I'm going to ask Dave.
I haven't had a chance.
Oh,
to
I'm
answer.
sorry. I'm
okay.
sorry.
That's okay. Again,
Anything to add on this one, Laura?
what's that?
Do you have anything to add?
I think I might have a thing or two.
I apologize.
Okay. Again, I think it's misleading for the Conservatives to talk about lack of foreign investment. That Ontario actually leads the country in direct foreign investment. Under Kathleen Wynne, we are creating 500 jobs a day. We have hit the 1 million job mark in the years that we've been under Liberal government. These types of things are so important to growing the economy. We see the economy leading Canada. Canada has paid more than its fair share of the costs to the rest of the country. So I think that when we look overall, we're doing fantastic. And as I said earlier, but some people are feeling left behind. So we have to look at targeted investments that help those people who are feeling left behind, like the pharmacare, like the preschool, like the increase to minimum wage. And when we get more people working with free preschool, and we can then grow the economy even more.
Okay, thanks very much. I have a question here. Dave Slossie, I'll give this one to you to begin. The formidable size and aging baby boomer generation is now part of our seniors demographic. What is your party's plan to ensure appropriate housing and long-term care facilities will be available and affordable for this sector of the growing population?
Thanks. When I was first asked by my community to run as a local councillor in Ward 3 in Willow Beach, it was when the water and sewers project was coming into the area. A lot of people were afraid at the time that they weren't going to be able to afford the hookup costs of that program. I made it my commitment and my goal to ensure that no one was going to be forced out of their home as a consequence of that water and sewer. We were able to put in plans to amortize the cost over 35 years for some residents. Some I was able to obtain direct Canadian Mortgage and Housing Corporation financing to pay for it. Nobody, as far as I know, lost their home as a result of those costs. The NDP is putting the same kind of a plan in that I'm really proud of, that we seniors can defer taxes on their homes until they choose that they decide they want to sell it and move away. And the province will pick up the cost of that so that the municipalities don't lose out. The municipalities aren't shortchanged by it, but will be able to maintain that cost, and the taxes are only due when a person chooses to move out.
Okay. Sylvia, would you like to respond to that question?
Yes, so here again we have way too many regulations, and there is also not enough competition on the market. If anybody wants to open a long-term care facility, they have to go through so many hoops that I bet some of these people just give up because it's way too hard for them. We're going to facilitate, we're going to provide a legal framework that will help, that will facilitate this approach. It will facilitate competition. It will make increase service offerings and decrease costs.
Thank you. Laura Lee.
Thank you. The Liberal Party has a fantastic plan for seniors. We know that our seniors are the ones that help build Ontario, and we need to make sure that they are well looked after. It's not just empty promises. We've seen the 12 long-term care beds that have already been slated for Georgina. We're talking about 300,000 more long-term care beds. We also have a tax credit of $750 for seniors so that they can stay in their home. Things like grass cutting and snow shoveling will be covered by this tax credit. The longer they can stay in their home, the better it is for them. We also are expanding our OHIP Plus, the free prescriptions to those over 65, as well as rent control will help seniors. And everyone knows that the Liberals led the country in CPP reform. We took a look at it as a government, and then the federal government ended up picking that up. So I think it's important that we look after our seniors, and we have a very concrete plan to do that with the things that seniors need to rely on.
Thank you. Caroline.
I think it's absolutely essential that we get to work on, we prioritize our seniors who have done so much to build this province. So our plan includes building 30,000 new long-term care beds. There are currently 32,000 seniors waiting for long-term care. We're going to build the first 15,000 in the first 5 years. We have a dental plan for low-income seniors, and we're going to reduce hydro rates so that to make life more affordable for seniors. We're going to help out small businesses so that they can be encouraged to hire more seniors who are still wanting to, who still want to work. But the biggest issue that we have is that our senior population is going to double over the next 15, 20 years, which means that our tax base is shrinking as our healthcare needs will be growing. And so we need to focus on cutting waste so that we can make sure that we're investing in the healthcare needs of our growing seniors population.
Okay, thank you. Yes, Dave. We'll open it up for a little bit of rebuttal.
Yeah, just a little bit. I just want to say it is very important to create new long-term care beds and long-term care facilities. The NDP is committed to increasing that by 40,000 new beds. At the same time, however, we've all heard the very unfortunate stories of care in a number of facilities. That is why the NDP is putting in place a program to enforce standards of care in all facilities, to enforce a minimum of 4 hours per day of hands-on care by qualified people caring for seniors in those long-term care facilities. Okay. The beds alone are necessary, but the standards of care are equally necessary.
All right. Does anyone else want to address those comments?
I just want to clarify. I think I misspoke. I said 300. I meant 30,000 long-term care beds. As soon as that came out of my mouth, I thought, wait a minute, that's not right. But I think that Dave's absolutely right that we do need to invest in care that goes along with it. A bed on its own is not enough. But when we say that we're having beds, it is the care that goes with it.
Okay, thank you. My next question is, I'm going to ask Sylvia actually to speak to this first. The concept of carbon taxes is being introduced to help reduce our emissions and our environmental footprint. Does your party agree with this measure? If so, why? And if not, why not?
No, our party does not agree with the carbon tax that has been introduced. It's an unnecessary burden. It's again a tax on a tax. It's a price increase. Just count 4.5 cents additional you pay for each liter of gas you're filling at the pump. There is no transparency. We don't even know where this money is going. And with cap and trade, as it turned out in another debate earlier on, we, the taxpayers in Ontario, might be funding somebody that sells carbon credits in California. Sorry, it has come up. So no, our party does not support the carbon tax, and we will scrap it.
Okay, thank you very much. Lorley?
I think the government has been very clear about how much money we have been able to raise through cap and trade, and have been very clear about where all that money is going. We're investing in infrastructure. The Green On plan, where homeowners can do retrofits to their home and receive rebates, helps us reduce our carbon footprint overall. And that's where the money's going, and I think that this plan is a good one. I think that there's a lot of fear-mongering about what it's going to cost, but it's been in place for over a year now. The fluctuations at the gas pump are not because of the carbon tax. Matter of fact, if you go online, there's a printout of all of the fluctuations in gasoline rates, and we're still well below the levels we were in 2014, which was long before cap and trade. So I think it's important to look at what the Conservatives would do if they refuse this money from the carbon tax, because that is what is funding our infrastructure.
Thank you. Caroline?
Well, we oppose a carbon tax because it's just another revenue-generating measure for the government. And the price of gas did go up in January by 4.3 cents a litre. So our plan is to scrap the cap and trade cap and trade, and also oppose any attempt by the federal government to impose a carbon tax on people of Ontario who cannot afford it any further. And so further to that, we plan to try to reduce the price of gasoline for people in Ontario 4.3 cents by scrapping cap and trade, but then also by reducing the provincial portion of the fuel tax.
Thank you. Dave?
Yes, the NDP supports reducing greenhouse gas emissions as being an essential to fighting climate change, an essential step in fighting climate change. And we support the cap and trade program to move towards a carbon neutral future. At the same time, we are critical of the way it's being administered and the lack of transparency. What we want to do is be able to take 25% of the proceeds from the cap and trade program and use those revenues to support individuals and communities with disproportionate burdens. Further, on the price of gasoline, we're going to mandate the Ontario Energy Board to monitor the price of gasoline and to advise on the policies in order to reduce price volatility and unfair disparities across the board.
All right. I'm just wondering if you would like to open the floor up for some rebuttal and debate. Laura Lee, you want to go first?
Sure. Caroline talks about this is just revenue generating. I think it's important to understand that when you have a budget that you need to balance, revenue has to come in order to afford the things that you're talking about. It's just simple math that money in, money out, it has to balance in the end. You can't keep promising to be cutting on the revenue side and spending on the other side. The Conservatives have absolutely no plan to fight climate change. It's the biggest issue facing us, and the Liberals have a solid plan, taxing the biggest polluters in order to get them to look at ways to reduce their emissions and using that money to invest.
I need to go to Dave. He's had his hand up. Okay. Next.
I'm also going to follow up a little bit on what Laura is saying. Caroline continues to reiterate Ford's line about we're going to cut gas prices by getting rid of the road tax. As a municipal councillor working here in Georgina, I know how much we relied upon those gas tax transfers for any infrastructure development we had in town. Fixing our roads, fixing our bridges, the Blue Bridge going over the Black River, gas tax revenue, repaving a lot of the north-south roads, gas tax revenue. You want to create employment and use the money to improve the infrastructure, you need that gas tax in place. You can't do both. Okay. Also, too, what we want to do is use that cap and trade funds for what the purpose is intended to be and reduce carbon footprints, carbon emissions, by allowing homeowners
I want to be
a retrofit program.
To give Caroline an opportunity
Sure.
to respond.
Well, I agree with Dave. Our plan to reduce the provincial portion of the fuel tax does not mean that we'll be taking money out of the we will be allowing municipalities to keep their portion of that tax. But asking Ontarians to pay more and more to fund election promises has become unconscionable. People cannot afford anymore. They expect us to do well, spend well with the money that we've already collected, and stop taxing more. And that's why we have to stop it. And that's why our party will stand up for hardworking Ontarians who are fed up. The cost of living has gone up, and by taxing more and borrowing more, we're just hurting the people that we're here to provide for.
Okay, thank you very much. My next question I'm going to give to Laura Lee, actually, to respond to first. Electricity bills in the province of Ontario are now some of the highest in Canada and North America. How will your party bring down the cost of electricity?
Thank you. Our party has already brought down the cost of electricity by 25% across the board. Plus, there is 40 to 50% for those who need it the most, and that has reduced bills substantially. I think that it's important to look at the other major parties have not proposed anything different than what we are currently doing. It's important that it's affordable. It's also important to understand that the system had to be rebuilt after years of Conservative in government and how the grid got worn down. So I think it's very important that when the Conservatives talk about cuts, what does that mean long term to our electricity? It's important that we continue to look at who is hit the hardest by electricity prices and make sure that they are subsidized, and we have a plan to do that.
Okay, thank you very much. Caroline?
Well, the average family's hydro bill since 2003 has gone up by $1,000 a year. And so it's hurting families across Ontario, across York-Simcoe. So the fact that bills have gone up by 400% is a priority. We have got to deal with this. And so our plan is to reduce rates for homeowners by 12%, and we're going to do that by rebating the dividend that the province gets from Hydro One, rebate that money directly to consumers. We're going to take the money that we get for conservation money that is used for conservation measures and rebate that across the tax base instead of giving it asking tax ratepayers to pay for it. But I'm going to use Laura Lee's favorite line. It's a bit rich to say that their plan to reduce rates is bringing relief. It has brought temporary relief in advance of an election. They've just deferred the cost down the lines. And electricity rates are going to go up under the Liberals, if they stay in office, by 6% starting in 2021.
All right, thank you very much. Dave.
Laura Lee's assertion that the Liberals have brought down the cost of hydro is quite misleading and not quite honest. What they've done is they've taken out a long-term loan in order to artificially reduce the costs. In the end, that program is going to wind up costing the ratepayers of this province an additional $40 billion. What we propose to do is to cut hydro bills by 30% and keep them down by making real structural changes. We're going to reverse the Liberal sell-off of Ontario Hydro, bring back into public control that essential utility that our forebears created for all of our benefit. That alone will cut the private profit margin out of the hydro bills. We're going to stop the overproduction of electricity in this province so that instead of losing 12 cents a kilowatt hour on all the overproduction we produce, we will eliminate those overruns and overcosts.
Okay. Sylvia.
I have a proposal to all major parties. Let's stop politicizing the electricity generations and get back to basics. Is anybody asking if maybe too many political parties have got their nose involved in this, and that's why the cost is so high? Why can't we, as Laura Lee said, no other major political party has any other better solution? Well, we the Libertarians, we have a completely different solution. We are going to liberalize this market. We are going to allow different players in this market. Competition, as well known, brings price reduction and increased services. We're going to let you people choose what you want to use. Right now you don't have a choice. It's take it or leave it. Why not?
Okay, thank you. Shall we open this question up for a couple of minutes of debate? Yes, Dave.
I'll just comment on Silvio's last remark there, that exactly in this case, you've demonstrated why privatizing a public utility is not effective. It's the privatization of hydro that's resulted in the additional costs. Now you're paying, as a private corporation, you are now paying the dividends to shareholders on your hydro bill. You are now paying for rental of provincially held facilities and waterways. You are now paying a super premium on all loans to guarantee the profit margin by banks. You are now paying a number of different service charges that are engaged in the private functioning. That is why exactly if you eliminate the privatization, I can demonstrate to you, and we'll do it off camera so you can see it.
Let Sylvia respond to
How many percentage points it drops?
Well, yes, I agree, but again, this is a single player. Let's see a market that has multiple players. How does that market perform? This is what I'd like to see, not a single-player market. A single-player market is still a single-player market, regardless if it's a government entity or private corporation. It's a single player.
And in your model, what you have is monopoly control coming in but from the private market.
Does anyone else want to chime in here? Yes, Laura Lee.
The NDP want to somehow buy back shares in hydro, which the money that sale generated helped buy the infrastructure that this province needs. So you talk on one hand about needing infrastructure. On the other hand, you're not going to buy infrastructure. Instead, you're going to buy shares in the distribution of hydro. OPG is not part of this. The power generation is not part of this, which is something that we have to always keep in mind. And we also have to remember that energy rates are set by an independent regulator. So this has nothing to do with the Hydro One or the Liberal government. It is separate where the rates are set.
All right. Caroline, did you want to?
Are you saying that the Liberal policies have nothing to do with the raising price of hydro in Ontario over the last 15 years, that Liberal policies have nothing to do with it?
I'm saying that there was a lot of contracts that were signed many years ago that have to do with the rates of hydro, but the selling of the minority share in Hydro One did not affect that.
Okay, I'm going to ask Dave to just respond for a second.
Yeah, well, the Ontario government can direct the Ontario Energy Board to set the rates so that they're not so onerous on the public.
Okay.
They're more loath to do that with a private corporation.
At this point, unfortunately, we have to take a short break, but please don't go too far away. We'll be right back with the York-Simcoe candidates to discuss some local issues, which I'm sure you won't want to miss. Welcome back to the York-Simcoe candidate debate. I'm Karen Wolfe, and I'm here with 4 of the candidates running in the next provincial election. Our next round of questions is a little more specific to our local area, and we're going to start with Caroline Mulrooney. Caroline, the Upper York sewage solution is being proposed to address growth in Aurora, East Gwillimbury, and Newmarket. Many Georgina residents and the Chippewas of Georgina Island oppose the idea of discharging 14 million litres a day of treated effluent into Lake Simcoe. Are you in favor of this solution? Yes or no? And please tell us why.
Well, this is a huge project that has taken, involves so many people, it costs a lot of money. And so I don't want to see, and no one wants to see a project like this delayed, but we need to protect Lake Simcoe. And so I am in favor of doing everything we can to make sure that we do everything we can to protect our greatest asset. Although we don't want to delay it any further, we need to make sure that we conduct all the studies that we need. You know, the Lake Simcoe Protection Act said no new sewage treatment plants into Lake Simcoe, but the ministry asked for a Lake Simcoe alternative. I know York Region has been working very hard to find a state-of-the-art technology. But that said, we need to make sure that we do the best that we can. And the Chippewas of Georgina Island are looking 7 generations into the future. And so we need to make sure we take the time to get this right. And so I would be in favor of making sure that we look at all options, including ones that we've considered in the past.
Okay, thank you very much. Dave.
No, I'm really glad to get this question. Thank you. By the way, it's 40 million litres a day of treated sewage coming in, not 14 as you said.
Sorry.
People in Georgina will know how hard I worked when this was first introduced here in Georgina. Initially, the region wasn't even going to have a public information session, let alone consultation, around Georgina, us who are the recipients of this waste from Aurora and Newmarket developments. The Liberal government, initially the plan was that all of these new housing developments were supposed to access the big pipe so that the sewage went down into Durham region, into Lake Ontario, out to the St. Lawrence. The Liberal government intervened and directed the region to look at a Lake Simcoe solution, to dump those effluents into our drinking water. We have to stop this. Not only, it says state of the art, but there is no state-of-the-art that allows people to remove pharmaceuticals and personal care products.
Okay, thank you, Dave. Sylvia, would you like to address this question?
I believe that, like everything else, this got too heated. We need to step back, look at everything, look at all the available options. Did we exhaust every available option? I don't know. I don't really know if we exhausted every single available option. Is this the only option that we have? I can't answer this question at this moment, unfortunately. So what I would do is I'd first consult and try to take a really hard look at what's going on and what else can we do to still allow development in the area without too many impediments, let's say.
Okay, thank you very much. Laura Lee.
Thank you. I think this is something that sounds like we're all pretty much in agreement on. We have to protect the lake. That's first and foremost. They call it the sewage solution. I don't believe it's a solution right now. We have to respect our First Nations. The Chippewas of Georgina Island have asked for further environmental assessment. We have to do that. They are our partners, and we need to work with them on this. But the bigger issue is that this isn't the only treatment plant around the lake. There's many more, and they're talking state-of-the-art for this one, but the rest of them are not state-of-the-art. We need to look at all of them and look for a solution that's a net zero to the lake or benefit to the lake. And I think until we step back and look at the whole picture, I would not agree with going ahead with this, especially without consulting our First Nations partners, because they have asked for the environmental assessment that is so needed here.
Okay. Dave, you'd like to debate this a little bit?
Yeah, just a bit. There is, to answer Silvu there is another alternative, and that was the initial proposal of putting it down the big pipe into the Durham treatment plant. But that was changed by the Liberal government in order to allow the developers to expand a project down in Durham, and to the detriment of the lake. Simcoe is a bowl. The contamination coming in that Laura Lee's talking about from all the other treatment plants around the water continue to accumulate in Lake Simcoe. There is no natural outflow other than the Trent River system, Trent Canal system, for all these pollutants. The bulk of the water is lost through evaporation. So phosphorus, personal care products, pharmaceuticals continue to concentrate within the body of the lake and in our drinking water. It's a fundamental health issue for everyone.
Thank you very much. I'm going to go on to the next question, and this one is being directed to you, Dave. The Maple Lake Estates development, which has approvals from all levels of government to construct 1,073 housing units in the North Gwillimbury Forest, has been a contentious issue now for almost 30 years. Should this development be allowed to go forward or not? Please explain your answer.
Okay, thank you. This is another one of my principal issues, the reason why I'm running in this election, because so many of the issues that affect all of us in Georgina and around the lake are determined by Queen's Park, the government in charge in Toronto. I have opposed the Maple Leaf development from the start, and I will continue to oppose the Maple Leaf estate development. Don't forget, this was initially planned and approved by an order in council. This was not the result of a normal planning process. It was approved by order in council. It can be stopped by an order in council. At this point in time, that's the only tool that's available, is to have the cabinet of this government, of the government in power, hopefully it will be an NDP government, that will be able to say, no, this project will not proceed because it is on a provincially significant wetland. Okay. It cannot be allowed to proceed. That's the political solutions. The legal solutions have been exhausted. It has to be political now.
All right. Sylvia, would you like to?
I believe in protecting the wetlands. They're very important for our environment. Now, in this particular case, you have the owner of this land and you have the other parties interested. Why haven't they been able to come to a solution, to come to an agreement, to figure something out? Is it possible we need an arbitrator or a mediator to take care of the problem instead of just letting, as Dave said, Queen's Park decide what is going to happen?
Okay, Laura Lee?
Thanks. As you know, I'm a staunch environmentalist. I've served on the Environment Committee in my town for many years. This particular issue of the North Gwillimbury Forest, I've been lobbying for since the last election in 2014, where Julia and I both signed a pledge that if the Conservation Authority went ahead with the Section 28 permit, that we would write to the minister about it. So I was at the Conservation Authority when they went ahead with that, and I went immediately from there to Julia's office to remind her of our pledge and make sure that she was doing what we both promised to do. I've lobbied the government on this and managed to get them to sit down with the various parties. They did have a meeting, and I've spoken up, even though the party hasn't issued that order that I wanted. I have spoken up, and I'm not afraid to put my government before party.
Okay. Caroline.
Well, as Silvio said, protecting our wetlands should be paramount here, and there's so many parties who are committed to doing that. And the town of Georgina did work out a solution many years ago, and I hear every day that we need to provide a real workable solution for all the parties involved. And Julia Monroe, as Laura Lee said, referenced, she wrote a letter to the minister, the Liberal minister, asking to bring all the parties back to the table so that we can work out a real solution here. And so if I'm elected, I commit to trying to do just that, bring all the parties together so that we can find a solution. It's become urgent. The Liberals have allowed this to go on for so long. We need to find a real workable solution here.
Okay, thank you very much. Dave.
I find the responses of the other parties at the table a little bit disingenuous. The Liberal minister, Morrow, has stated that he will not issue an order to stop development on the Maple Leaf Estates North Goldenberry Forest. He's been very unequivocal in that. He is very clear that there will be no order coming from the provincial government to stop this development. And as far as the Conservative plans, we have a leader of that party who is promising backroom deals with developers, saying he's going to remove more land from the Greenbelt. So we can't expect him to change his mind, although he was caught out in the last comment and tried to retract. We can't expect him now to want to include more land in protected areas.
Okay. Yes.
And this is exactly why we need a strong voice for this riding to speak up for what we need here, because there definitely needs to be a stop order. And I don't agree with the land swap that would take land out of the Greenbelt. You know, we know that Doug Ford's comments about cutting up the Greenbelt, and I think that we need to stand firm on that. There definitely needs to be a solution, but that solution cannot be to swap out the wetland for the Greenbelt, and I do believe that there is a solution that can be worked out.
Caroline.
I just want to correct the statements because our party has been very clear that that our position is to preserve and maintain the Greenbelt as it is. Unlike the Liberals who have carved up the Green Belt many times, up to 17 times last year, our plan is to preserve and maintain it.
All right. Thank you very much. I'm going to go on to the next question now, and this I'm going to ask Silvio to take this one. Transportation infrastructure is a key element in providing economic activity and opportunities for our area. There are ongoing conversations to build a bypass that will connect the 404 with the 400. Would you commit to that project, and what other ideas do you have to boost economic development in this area?
First of all, I believe that the transportation bypass is very important for the economical life of this riding. It needs, if you want to have a vibrant economic life, you need to be able to have, this infrastructure that will allow you to quickly move goods and people around. So as in terms of me supporting this bypass, yes, it's a definite yes. I am affected personally by the really bad traffic that is in the area due to the fact that, let's face it, the region has grown a lot, but the infrastructure is more or less inexistent or very, very ancient.
Okay, thank you very much. Laura Lee.
Thank you. We do need, with the growing of this area, we do need to keep investing in infrastructure. We saw that Liberals are dedicated to that with the extension of the 404. I'm very much in favor of the 404-400 link. I've been speaking about that since 2014. There was a time when East Gwillimbury wasn't in favor of it, and it made it hard to proceed because half of it, as you know, goes over across East Gwillimbury lands. Now that we have a partnership between the East Gwillimbury Council and the Bradford Council, it's been put back on the growth plan because both municipalities agree, and it's something that I will continue to advocate for, and something I have been advocating for, like I said, for many years. The type of return on investment that you get from investing in agriculture, in infrastructure, is it helps with our agriculture to get it from one place to the other. It helps getting our goods from our businesses from one place to the other, and it saves billions in lost revenue.
Okay, thanks very much, Caroline.
Well, I absolutely do support the link between the 400 and the 404 and commit to advocating for that and being a very strong voice for that. It's an essential piece of infrastructure for the riding, and it's time, though, for action to get shovels in the ground. The Liberals did just put it back into the Greater Golden Horseshoe Plan after removing it years ago. What we need, though, is we need money behind it, and currently it is not on the list of any of Infrastructure Ontario's plans. And so we need the commitment, but we also need to put the money behind it. In terms of the rest of your question of what else we can do, we need to expand broadband access in the riding, especially for small businesses, farmers who need to be able to access, who need broadband to be able to run their machinery and operate their businesses. It's essential. And so I've already made statements to that, and it's something that we need to work towards.
Okay, thank you very much. Dave.
I was on Georgina Council when we had the completion of the 404 come through to Ravenshoe Road here. And that was a great boon for the local commuter. However, the larger plan of being able to develop the workplace lands, the industrial park, still remains incomplete. I regret that. The linkage, though, between the 400 and the 404 is necessary to stimulate that kind of growth in the employment lands, both in Bradford, East Gwillimbury, and in Georgina. At one point in time, I tried to put in a provision so that new housing developments would only be approved if there was a concurrent development of employment lands happening on our industrial park. I wasn't successful in that, but we need to facilitate all of those kinds of economic growth opportunities in order to improve the quality of life so that all the residents of Georgina aren't spending so much time commuting every day.
All right, thank you.
On a nice highway, 404.
It seems that we're, yes, Laura Lee.
I think that it's important that we consider how these things are going to be paid for. That we've seen the NDP plan has a huge hole in it, a $1.4 billion hole in their costing. We know that the Conservatives have not provided us with a costed plan. I hear cuts to revenue all over the place from the Conservatives and no idea of how they're going to pay for these things that Caroline says she's in favor of.
Okay. Dave?
Lorley can't go there when it comes to dismal fiscal records. I mean, a whole list of independent auditors have given a scathing analysis of the past and present Liberal budgets. The Auditor General of Ontario, the Financial Accountability Office of Ontario, the former Director of the Public Sector Accounting Standards Bureau, Mike Moffat, even the economist that the Liberals picked to scrutinize the NDP plan, has said that our plan will post the lowest deficit of all the parties in this campaign. There was an error. It was corrected, admitted. It's still the best plan in the long term to support infrastructure, support social programs, and reduce the deficit.
All right, thank you. Caroline?
And our plan is to find efficiencies and find a way to reduce waste. The Auditor General looked at just 14 programs and found $1 billion of waste from this Liberal government without a single layoff. The Liberals have been wasting money, and we need to do a much better job. But when we win on June 7th and we open the books on June 8th, we don't know what we're going to find because they've engaged in such creative accounting. And while they said they were going to balance the budget, this year they announced that they're not, that they're going to put us in a $6 billion deficit. And the Auditor General said that that was even misrepresented. So we need to be honest with Ontarians about what we're going to do and what we're going to be able to pay for and when we're going to be able to provide those services. And it's not just about winning an election, it's about doing what's right for Ontarians in the long term.
Okay, thank you.
So when you talk about efficiencies, I think it's very interesting because you're talking about opening up the books. Well, I can say that I have looked at the books as far as the school board goes. I've been vice president of Ontario Public School Boards Association with looking at all boards across Ontario, and I know that the vast majority of the spending in education, which is our number 2 biggest line item in the Ontario budget, in education, the vast majority is people, it's jobs. So you cannot cut and find efficiencies when it's people. Either people get laid off or people get a cutback. And we know under the NDP government that when Bob Rae was in power, that efficiency ended up costing people 6 days' pay in the form of Rae days.
Okay,
so we have to think really hard about what these efficiencies mean.
Thank you. I'm going to move on to the next question. And Laura Lee, I'm going to ask you to be the first one to take this question. The majority of economic activity in Georgina comes through the delivery of goods and services by small business enterprises. However, some believe the new minimum wage legislation will affect their ability to remain competitive. How will your party mitigate the impact on small business to ensure they remain an integral sector of Georgina's economy?
Thank you for that question. I think it's really important talking about minimum wage because it does affect this area. People deserve a living wage. When we don't provide a living wage for people, we end up paying, taxpayers end up paying for it in other forms of subsidy. So we need to pay them a minimum living wage. As far as helping small businesses, the Liberal government cut taxes by 22% on small businesses to help offset the cost of the minimum wage. We also have the burden reduction bill, which helps to cut red tape to help small businesses, as well as $500 million in new initiatives that help the small businesses thrive. So I think that there's a number of things that have been put in place. But I do think there's more to do. I have said in previous debates, I have family that have a small business. I have friends that have small businesses, and I know that there's more that we need to do because our economy, we need those small businesses to be thriving.
All right, Caroline.
Well, I agree with Laura Lee that people deserve to earn a living wage. But in 2014, when the Liberals had the opportunity to raise minimum wage, they decided to index it to inflation. It was just before this election that they decided to introduce Bill 148 and increase the minimum wage so quickly. And I've heard from so many small business owners that it's just too much, too fast, too much for them to absorb. And as a result of implementing policies with this kind of political motivation, they end up hurting those that they intend to help. And so we've got to work with small businesses to mitigate some of the impacts of this bill. We do that by providing tax rates, a small business tax cut. For small businesses, we need to reduce their hydro rates, which are also huge costs for small businesses to absorb, and cut red tape. A lot of these small businesses don't have huge compliance departments like some of the bigger companies, and so they're doing this all themselves, and it's time spent away from actually conducting their real business.
Okay, thank you very much. Dave.
Yeah, I hear Caroline talking about people wanting to support people on minimum wage, yet their government, their leader is talking about cutting, and Caroline yourself said you want to roll back the planned increase in minimum wage. That only hurts people directly. The plan will take thousands of dollars out of working people's pockets right away. We support the increase in minimum wage, as exactly as Laura Lee said, people deserve a living wage. However, what the Bill 148 didn't do, it didn't address the precarious need of people in part-time and precarious work. Those also have to be included and protected as well. Businesses, though, will be greatly helped by us in putting in a universal drug and dental plan to support the owners of small business and their employees. We're going to maintain the 1/3 reduction in taxes for small business, as well as I said before, reducing hydro rates, particularly the time of day billing, which singles out and punishes small business.
Okay, thank you very much. Sylvia.
Yeah, Karen, thanks for the question. It's, first of all, in my opinion, this entire one-size-fits-all doesn't work. I understand why the Liberal government wanted to increase the minimum wage, because in Toronto, for instance, you can't live on a very small wage. But it's not the same in a place like Windsor. Why do we need to put a blanket minimum wage across the province when local conditions don't apply, really? Isn't it better, aren't we be better off leaving this to the municipality, local people that know local conditions? This is one point. Then the second point is, I believe that everybody is capable of judging for himself what he or her have to do to achieve a goal. So, in my opinion, it's not the government's position to stand between two consenting adults to negotiate a certain contract.
All right, thank you very much. Okay, I have a question here that I would like to ask all of you, and we'll start with Caroline. If this election should result in a minority government, we would be interested in your personal views on a coalition scenario. Would this be good for Ontario or not? Please explain your answers.
Well, it's quite a hypothetical. I'm counting on the PC party winning a majority government and finally bringing relief to hardworking Ontarians. But in that circumstance, I can't speak to to our party having a coalition with another party where, we're the only ones who are fighting for a real change in direction. So I actually can't foresee that. As to whether the other parties would get together in a coalition, you'd have to ask them. But I can't see our party joining a coalition with another.
All right, thank you, Dave.
Once again, I am hoping for a majority New Democratic Party government, that we can get these good things done that I've been talking about. In reality, if we look at the history of this province and the policies that have been put in by Liberal and Conservative governments, they're the ones that are in a natural coalition. If you look at the continuing reduction in corporate tax rates imposed by both of those governments, if we look at the increasing costs, service costs, put on individual by successive Liberal and Conservative governments, you see that they are more in coalition. If you look at the series of broken promises and surprise privatizations, transferring public money from Ontario Hydro, from investment in hospitals, from various public sources into private hands. Liberals and Conservatives, I've been a de facto coalition all along.
Okay. So,
okay, if we're talking about my personal point of view, I do, as a libertarian, support competition. So what the coalition would mean in front of my eyes is flow of ideas from one side to the other one. That means I would welcome a coalition, because let's face it, the Libertarian Party is a small party in Ontario. Not too many people know about this. But I believe that having an open discussion with every party involved will allow new ideas to flourish. We'll come up with novel ideas in various aspects, something that nobody ever thought about. Like, just to give you a good example, town of Innisfil and their public transportation. How did they solve it? They didn't spend millions of dollars running a bus every day. They made a deal with Uber. Novel idea. Why can't we have more novel ideas?
okay, thank you. Laura Lee.
Thank you. I think talking about a coalition in the middle of an election is a little premature. I think that there is a lot of similarities in the platforms of the NDP and the Liberals. We can't really look at what the Conservatives are doing because they've yet to present a costed plan. They're telling everyone what they want to hear, money in your pocket and spend on this and spend on that. But when you add it up, it doesn't make sense. They would put us further into deficit. And so my question to Caroline is, when will your party present a costed plan like everyone else has?
Would you like to respond to that?
Our plan is to make sure that we are not making promises that we can't keep to the people of Ontario, and that's what they expect. That's what they'd like to see from their political parties. And so our plan is focused on priorities, addressing priorities that Ontarians need us to address, and making sure that when we do make promises that we can keep them. And we won't know until we open the books and see what kind of mess the Liberals have left for us, what we can afford to do. And so we will not make promises that we won't be able to keep. But the Liberals and the NDP have voted together many times, and so they are, as Laura Lee said, they are more naturally inclined to agree, and so probably more likely to have a coalition together.
Okay, Dave.
I guess, of course, we agree on things that benefit the people of this province and benefit the working person. Yes, those issues, those topics I support. And I've stated a couple times those programs such as Bill 148 on labor raising minimum wage, we support it. But Doug Ford, once again, yeah, he said he has an economic plan for Ontario. He said, I think I got the quote correct, I'm going to go down to the United States border and put up a neon sign saying Ontario is open for business. That's not a plan.
Laura Lee, did you want to respond?
Yes. again, Caroline, saying these things isn't a plan. Saying we have a plan without showing the people of Ontario what that plan is with a costed document like every other party has provided, I think it's unconscionable in this late in the election to not have a costed plan to show how you can do the things that you're going to do, because people have to understand that in balancing the books, it's money in and money out. You can't be cutting your revenue and increasing spending. It doesn't work that way. And again, I say, when will we see a costed plan?
Okay, thank you very much. I have a yes or no question here, and we only have a couple of minutes. If your party was to form the next government, would you be willing to lobby for a large government organization, agency to be located in Georgina to support increased employment opportunities here and reduce our dependence on commuting? And we'll start with Dave.
Yeah, unequivocally, yes. That would give a great anchor to the local industrial park to provide a solid workforce in the area. Okay. One of the things the NDP has been committed to do is to try to expand procurement from small businesses.
We only have a few minutes. Thanks. Yes or no?
Short answer would be yes. We'd like to hear what the local people would have to say.
Okay.
Absolutely,
right. Yeah.
And I think the link gives us a good start for that, where we're seeing a bunch of agencies coming together under one roof, and doing more in that way would be fantastic, absolutely.
Okay. Caroline?
Yes, like Sylvia, I'd like to see what it is, but I think more employment would be great. Well, we would need to focus on creating private employment, private sector employment in the area.
Okay, great. All right. Thank you very much, candidates. This is our last question now before we go to closing statements, and we're going to start with Sylvia. Of all the issues facing the electorate in this election, what is your top priority? Not your party's priority, but yours personally.
My own personal priority would be give people back the control. I don't think that the government has to make decisions for people. I think people are capable of making their own choices and decide for themselves what exactly they want. That's why we need people to send us a strong message to let us know what they want.
Okay. Go ahead.
Well, as an environmentalist, it's the environment, and especially living up here. I live right in the center of the riding, and I look out over a forest and a farmer's field and cow pasture across the road, and I know the environment is so, so important here. And that's why in my plan, I've talked about cleaning up the Thane smelter, about protecting the North Gwillimbury forest and wetlands, and about protecting our lake. And most importantly is the climate change initiatives. We need to make sure that we are addressing climate change. And I think to have a party, one of our major parties, not addressing climate change is just a horrible thought for the direction Ontario might take in the future. So my number one priority is the environment.
Okay, Caroline.
My number one priority is the one that I hear from so many people that they expect the next government to focus on, which is lowering the cost of living and making it easier for companies to do business, getting government out of people's way. So we need to lower the cost of hydro, we need to provide tax relief, we need to cut red tape, and we need to focus on this future of debt and deficits that the Liberals, which is the Liberals' legacy. And so focusing on making life more affordable is a priority for me and a priority for a PC government.
Thank you very much. Dave?
I want to be able to finish the work that I began while on Georgina Council, particularly about the preservation and protection of the Lake-Simcoe watershed and the wetlands. I'm very similar to Laura Lee in this respect, that those particular named projects are things that I want to get accomplished. I don't need to have another project this time in my life, but I do need to leave that legacy for future generations. The difference is between Laura Lee and myself that unlike previous Liberal governments, I commit to actually do it and get it done.
Is there anything that's been left unsaid in this question? Anybody want to add something to it?
I think that your question about a personal priority versus a party priority, I think that's what you heard here. On this side of the table, I think that we had talking points from the Conservatives, and a personal priority tells you who you are. And I think you got that loud and clear from some of us here.
Well, can I respond?
Of course you can.
So what I've seen after with 15 years of Liberal governments is a government that makes political decisions instead of deciding what's in the long-term best interests of the people of Ontario. And because of the way they've implemented these policies, they've ended up hurting so many people along the way, whether it was the quick implementation of Bill 148 when they had the option to look at it years before, the Green Energy Act. While we're asking people to conserve more, we're signing long-term contracts for energy we don't need. And so for me, this is about making life more affordable through the right kind of policy making, thinking about what's in the long-term best interest, not about how a party is going to win an election.
Thank you. Dave.
A reference was made earlier during the debate to 30 plus years ago, an NDP government that facing the worst depression, recession that the province had been in since World War II, instituted something called Ray Days. And yeah, I was caught in that. I lost 6 days' pay during that period of time, but I kept my job, along with everyone else in the province. As soon as the Conservatives came in after that, I was let go. With 6,000 nurses, 7,000 other teachers, 6 hospitals closed. If you're looking to save money by closing down all services and cutting access of people, that's what Caroline's policy seems to be about.
Okay, thank you very much. At this time, I'm going to ask you to take a minute and present your closing remarks, and we're going to go in reverse order. So, Caroline, I'll ask you to go first.
Well, thank you so much. As I've sat with families in their kitchens and their living rooms, they've shared with me their hopes for the future. And there are things that we all wish for, to build a brighter future for ourselves and our families. But after 15 years of Liberal governments, life has become more unaffordable for residents in York-Simcoe and across Ontario. Since 2003, the average hydro bill has gone up by $1,000 a year. The provincial debt is now at $311 billion, and we are paying $1 billion a month to service it. That means that there is less to be invested in the supports and services we deserve and we need. Now, the other candidates here today have told you that they are the only one with a plan to help Ontario families, businesses grow and thrive. And I believe that they believe that. But the reality here is that their promises come with heavy costs. And in the end, Ontario families will be worse off than we are now. I will not tell you there will be quick and simple solutions. What I will tell you, though, is that the party's priority, my priority, is to help people thrive once again by creating the conditions for success. It's time to do things differently in Ontario, and I look forward to being a voice for change at Queen's Park.
Thank you very much. Laura Lee.
Thank you. York-Simcoe deserves an experienced local leader with a local plan. I've experienced not just from 15 years on the school board, but also as an environmental activist, as a consumer advocate for new homeowners, on the library board, on the environment committee, et cetera, et cetera. I've dedicated my life to serving this community, and I want to continue to do that as your representative at Queen's Park. I have a local plan for Georgina that includes not only the environment issues that we talked about earlier, but also funding the Sutton Health Centre, increasing our Go Bus service up here, and investing in our business park that will create more jobs. These type of investments are so important, and this is a plan that no one else has put forward, and I think that it's important that each of us really look at what we want in our future leader here in York-Simcoe. An experienced local leader will serve York-Simcoe the best.
Thank you very much. Sylvia.
Thank you, Karen. I was born and raised in a former Eastern Bloc country. And that's why I believe that freedom is the most important thing in life. I know how it is to live without freedom of any kind. I can see a steady but growing government interference in our daily lives. Is this really what you want? Let's not allow this province to slide further towards partisan political interests that can only favor a single but small layer of our society. Please make your voice heard, and let us know what you have planned for the future of Ontario. On June 7th, please go to polls and vote Libertarian, because we are here to serve you and only you.
Thank you very much. Dave.
Given the negligence and broken promises of past Liberal and Conservative governments, only a New Democrat Only I, with determination to get the problem solved, can prevent destruction of the forest complex, dumping of chemicals into our drinking water, and the shameful runoff from the smelter site. Only the New Democrats will bring in universal drug benefits and dental care. Only New Democrats will lower hydro rates by 30%, car insurance by 15%, and put controls on gas price gouging. I am the right candidate to represent us in York-Simcoe. I don't really have a desire for another career. That's not what this is about. Just a desire for completing some essential work. I grew up here, graduated from St. Thomas and Sutton High. Join me to elect an NDP government. Send me to Queen's Park so that I can get good things done.
Thank you very much. That concludes our debate. I want to thank each and every one of our candidates for their participation, and I hope our program actually has helped you make an informed decision. Also running in the York-Simcoe riding are Alexandra Salaki for the Green Party and Franco Covecchio for the Moderate Party. This broadcast will be repeated every day up until the election, and it will also be online. We'll be back here on June the 7th at 9 o'clock when we will provide up-to-date minute results on the local campaign, and we hope you will join us then. I want to thank you very much for watching this program, and thank you for watching Rogers TV. And right now I'm going to get up and I'm going to go over and thank each and every one of our candidates.
Thank you
and
very
wish
much,
them
Karen.
very much luck.
Great job. Thank you.
Yes,
Thank you,
good
Karen.
luck. Good luck to all of you. Good luck. Good luck to you. And thank you very much. I think actually you've done a great